Coming up on today's show, the decision to leave your place of employment and go it alone is not a decision to be taken lightly. I'd like to share with you some of the things that happen in my life to make me take the direction of being an entrepreneur. Stay tuned. A lot to talk about on this episode of That Plastics Guy. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Kurt Stahle, That Plastics Guy. If you're new to the show, this is where I share my 4 decades of plastics industry experience with you, and I'll educate, interview, share case studies, showcase innovative products, and always discuss the topics and trends that affect our industry. And today's podcast is sponsored by Toray, compounders of nylon, PBT, and ABS, as well as distributors of, and manufacturers for that matter, of multiple variants of ABS for a wide range of applications. Toray is part of the dynamic line of polymers, colorants, additives, functional master batches, and purge compound that are sold across Canada by my company, Simcoe Plastics, where we truly have a passion for polymers. You can visit us at simcoeplastics.com or contact us at info@simcoeplastics.com. So today's show is going to be a little bit different because we're going to be talking about something that is certainly near and dear to my heart, being an entrepreneur, business owner, and just sort of stepping outside of the plastics industry. I mean, the plastics industry is certainly the backdrop for what I do, but making the decision to go it alone is, I think it's worth talking about. And if you're thinking about it, not just in plastics, but perhaps in an industry that you feel quite strongly about, maybe it's time to take the plunge, and maybe I can sort of walk you through the considerations that I had in my mind and help you make that decision. And if the decision is, no, this is not for you, that's a valid decision. It is not a decision for everybody. Being an entrepreneur, it offers a tremendous amount of freedom, but with a tremendous amount of freedom comes a tremendous amount of responsibility. It requires discipline. Nobody is going to be out there forcing you to show up to work every day. You have to do it. You've set a business plan in motion. You've created a budget. You have to hit it, or you're going to starve, and you're going to get into trouble. And I've been there too with another business. It's not a pleasant thing to have to face. So if you're going to go in the direction of being on your own, that's a wonderful decision, but there are a lot of things to consider, and I would like to take you through some of that. So first of all, what drove my decision? So I have been in the industry for quite some time. I started working for my father's company in 1986. And, from that age and even before with another business that he owned, I was sort of participating in pretty adult level conversations with him about what was going on in the business world, how he was doing things, the decisions he was making, the rationale. So in a sense, it was like a master's class, well before one would be ready to absorb things at that level. But a case study situation, master's class, however you wish to describe it. But I was being given a tremendous amount of information and background at a very early age, and it was just driven home with so many examples of what to do and why certain business decisions were made, why certain projects were followed, why certain projects weren't, who was a good and acceptable credit risk and who wasn't, and why. So these pieces of knowledge I gained, I think it's fair to say, much earlier than many other people would. And that's fantastic. It was a great business education. And perhaps one of the reasons why, even though I did an undergrad degree at U of T and I did my MBA as well, pursuing an academic direction with business, I didn't feel I need to, because I was getting the master class from somebody who is experiencing a tremendous amount of success in business. So the idea of having to do it in a formal education system didn't seem to quite jive with me. I spent most of my time when I wasn't in university working very hard and learning the systems of the company that I was working for at the time, which was Canada Trust. So I was gaining some finance background, and that itself was tremendously beneficial. But fast forward, I had mentioned many, many times over the course of the podcast that I had worked for A. Schulman Canada for 12 years. And when they closed their Canadian operations for good in, when was that? July of 2010. Yeah. So it was, 12 years and 1 month technically. But, I'm splitting hairs there. So when they closed that operation and I got a package for 10 months of salary. And, that's sort of the Canadian labor law. That's the way it would work out. And I was quite happy with that. I bought my company car for, the last remaining lease payment. So at least I had some wheels that were well looked after and reliable. I was perfectly content with that. And the decision of what to do with my time certainly came up. And I had spent so much time in the industry that it only made sense to capitalize on that. I really wasn't in a position to pivot into a different industry and go through the learning curve of a different industry. And quite frankly, at the time, I wasn't interested in a different industry. I was relieved to be relieved of my position at Schulman. Towards the end, I was responsible for all of Canada. And we still had almost as many customers as we did in our heyday, just less business with each customer, obviously, or they wouldn't have chosen to shut down the operation and retire myself and try and handle everything from their U.S. operations in Canada, which I don't think was terribly successful, but that's neither here nor there at this point in time. So when the news came that I was no longer part of Schulman, my major customer contacted first Schulman to give them a piece of their mind, which was nice, but then to contact my closest competitor and demand they hire me, which they weren't really going to do because they had somebody in Canada looking after things. But it was determined that at some point in time in the not too distant future, I would rep them independently. Now, bearing in mind, I couldn't do that right away because I did have a non-compete and I wasn't about to do anything that would jeopardize the payout that I had. So I enjoyed myself for a little while, I have to admit. I spent some time working with my wife to build her business, my wife at the time, fortunately no longer married, and she's also no longer alive. And the business that she built, she did sell prior to the pandemic. But I had worked with her to build that up to some degree. So, my time was utilized. But by the end of the year, I was really itching for something. And as luck would have it, there's a gentleman who owned, the fellow who started Simcoe Plastics, who founded it, wanted to sell and retire. And at the time he was trying to sell it, basically we were just coming out of the financial crisis of '07 and '08. Not a great time to do much of anything, much less sell a business. So through a connection through my uncle, who had recently spoken to this fellow at a social function, he suggested I give him a call. His business is for sale and it would be a great fit. And I already knew of the fellow who had Simcoe Plastics, Bill, and met him at a couple of industry functions, and he had a good reputation in the industry. So I was taking on a very positive thing, and I like that. So Bill and I met, and we determined very quickly that it would make sense if I bought his business, and his asking price was quite reasonable. I'm not going to disclose it, but basically I could have spent far more money starting from scratch and without credit from suppliers. I could have burned through a lot more cash. So that's fine. It just made a lot of sense. I cashed out a portion of my RSP to buy the business. And several months later, Bill had actually gone on an extended trip to visit family. And we agreed when he returned, we would finalize everything, which we did. And it's a very straightforward business purchase. He had really nothing personal in the business to deal with, no company car, nothing along those lines, no employees at that point in time, although his sales rep did actually come to work for me, which was quite enjoyable. I learned a lot from that fellow before he did retire. I guess where I'm going with this, there was almost a synchronicity. And that I appreciate does not happen every time when you're looking at acquiring a business. But sometimes things just line up really nicely. Just for example, Bill, who started Simcoe Plastics, he's a sailor, and my uncle's a sailor. That's how they knew each other. And I am too. And Bill started sailing at the Barrie Yacht Club on Lake Simcoe, hence Simcoe Plastics. And, I bought my first boat at, I had it put in at the Barrie Yacht Club at Lake Simcoe. So we just had some commonality there. It was kind of interesting. But Bill had done a good job with the business. I didn't have to worry about that. He was very open with basically every aspect of the transaction and transition. So I just didn't feel that there was a disproportionate, not threat, but a disproportionate amount of things I had to be concerned about. The business just basically needed to be revitalized and kind of kickstarted. But all the framework was there. There was a book of business. There was an extensive customer list, supplier list, a good sense of what we were good at selling at the time. That changed, but everything made sense. And as I mentioned, the price to acquire the business was reasonable. So in my mind, it was a good move to acquire it. One of the things I learned, unfortunately, the hard way with another business purchase, if it's hard, if it's very hard, and it's only you're not going with partners to do things. Creating a partnership is another fun thing. I could probably write a book on that. But if it's just you, and there's a certain amount of flow to how the deal is moving forward to buy somebody's business, and they're genuinely interested in your success, things come together just a little bit easier. It's not saying you skip due diligence and due process. You have to do that. But when things are kind of meant to be, it comes together easier. You'll just know. It's a difficult thing to describe. There are opportunities out there every day to purchase a business, even if it's a franchise, if that's the kind of thing that you're interested in. The opportunities really do exist. They're out there, and you have to become very good at evaluating a business opportunity. With Simcoe Plastics, it made an awful lot of sense, and there really weren't too many people who would be qualified to take the business over and do what Bill had started doing and what I would continue doing. I took it in a slightly different direction, and I continue to move it in a different direction based on what is actually feasible in the market right now. And that changes over time, and you better be able to adjust to, using sailing as a metaphor. The winds will change. You're not going to change the winds. You have to adjust your sails accordingly. So as the competitive landscape changes, you need to be able to have confidence in your skill set or to bring people around you to advise you. But I really suggest you have the confidence in your skill set to adapt to whatever the current market situation may be. So I had enough entrepreneurial, I guess, background, or it was imparted, which was really nice. Several family members owned their own companies, including my uncle, who connected me with Bill regarding buying Simcoe Plastics. There was just a lot of business knowledge there and a lot of rooting from the sidelines too, which I certainly appreciate. And don't underestimate that. If you're going into buying a business and you don't have excellent support, if it's from significant family members who have been through this kind of situation before or have built a business from zero, that's a completely different skill set and approach. And you better have some of that too, because you're going to be building after you buy, I'd almost guarantee. Maybe you have a sibling that you're close to who has been through this process, and they can not only cheer you on, but actively help. That's you need that. And if you're fortunate enough to have an understanding partner or an equally motivated partner who's also into being their own boss, I think that's really, really, it's not just important. I think it's essential, especially your partner, your life partner, however that situation may look for you. If they're not on board helping you and backing you and being, your kind of emotional rock, it's going to be a lot more difficult. You don't want to be fighting all the things in business that you're inevitably going to be fighting, plus trying to manage what is potentially an unstable situation at home, or the concept of variable income. That may be a real pressure point for your partner. Another way to look at it, and I'm kind of in this situation, I'm the one with a variable income, and my partner now, she has a great job. We're very, very fortunate, and she is sort of the anchor income, and that can be very helpful. Prior to going out on my own, I was the anchor income until things changed with the company I worked with. And, that's another very good reason to consider being self-employed. You get to control your own fate. It's not a question of somebody else controlling it for you. Now, the larger the company you work for, you might be safer. But are you untouchable? No. I think you have to come to the understanding that no matter where you are or what you're doing, somebody could decide, hey, we don't need this person anymore. And you could be in real trouble. Not to say you can't be with your own business too, but you have a far greater degree of control, and you're going to have far more time to figure out that you may have some issues, and you can, again, the sailing metaphor, adjust the sails accordingly. And that's really important. And in my opinion, those of us that choose the path of being an entrepreneur, business owner, we trust our abilities to adjust for market changes. And I think it's maybe even one step further than that. We thrive on having that degree of control. We don't want somebody else to make the important decisions. We want to be the ones. Sometimes that desire can be, it can be, I'm not going to say unfounded, or I'm trying to collect my thoughts here as I speak, but we want to be the ones making the big decisions. We have an appropriate level of confidence in our skills and our ability to make decisions and to read the market. That's not to say things like a pandemic don't come in and lay bare the best plans that are out there, as happened to myself and another business. But I have no regrets buying Simcoe Plastics, and here I am 14 and a half years on. I really love what I do. Didn't sound like it right there, but I love what I do, and I can be thoughtful of it, and I can say that in a thoughtful way. I do love what I do. When I get up in the morning, I feel, generally speaking, very positive about the types of things that I have to do to get deals done, or, get an order in for the day, or 2 orders in for the day, or, get a supplier paid, whatever the case. I don't go to work with a sense of dread. I don't go to work thinking, oh my God, I wish I was doing something else. I don't have those. That's not to say every once in a while, you'd like to check out and take a vacation and do something that's, less demanding. I think that's pretty normal. But really, for the most part, I get up every morning pretty damn excited about what I'm going to be faced with doing for the day and keeping the business moving. You can look at setting different goals for yourself during the day. If it's, so many customer calls or points of contact, to a combination of call or email or some piece of marketing, drip marketing through a CRM, whatever the case, whatever your metrics are for your industry. But doing these things to constantly move the business forward, keep the cash flow flowing, keep everyone paid, and keep deals coming, that's a big task. It really is. And then if you're fortunate enough to hire people, either in a sales capacity or in an administrative capacity, you're responsible. You become responsible for them too, and you're putting them first. If cash is tight and you have to meet payroll, you're paying them. You're not paying yourself, and that's sometimes the downside of being an entrepreneur. But that's what you have to do. I've been in situations where I've had to personally manage payroll more than once. It's not a pleasant feeling, trust me, but your people are relying on you and you have to be there for them. And this sort of goes back to what I said at the top of the show about having responsibilities and what things are you going to pick that work for you. You have a lot of freedom to set strategic decisions, to a strategic course in the business, choosing your customers. And I really firmly believe you need to choose proactively the customers you are going to work with, because some, they may be good for your competitors, but it may not be a good fit for you. Or there may be personality conflicts and you're not going to enjoy working with them, and it's just going to show. So actively go out and find the people you want to work with and do your best to work with them. You'll end up having a much better, much stronger business, and it will be even more enjoyable than if you just sort of let things happen. Now, when you're starting out, or if you've just bought a business and you have to revitalize it, sometimes you just have to take a sale no matter where it comes from. I've been there. I get it. And that's okay. But over time, you fine tune the business and you get it to where it needs to be. And, before you know it, you're dealing with really solid, really good customers. And, sometimes they become like a second family, a business family, or you get to know them very well personally. And, there's some pros and cons with that. But I think at very least, you get to know these people as people. They're not just, a target account or your account or whatever. They become people that you enjoy dealing with tremendously. And if you can surround yourself with people that you provide your goods and services to, and, they're appreciative and they pay you on time and do all the right things, and it allows you to achieve the things you wish to achieve in life, that's a pretty sweet thing. And that is probably the biggest draw of being an entrepreneur. Just the ability to chart your own course. If you want to chart your own course, you really need to ask yourself if you're ready. It will strain you and drain you in ways you probably can't imagine, but it's going to be worth it. And the business will become such an integral part of who you are, for better or for worse. But I can't think of another thing I would rather do. And for those of us that are in this direction, the people that I've talked to, they're very much of the same opinion. They wouldn't want to be doing anything else. They wouldn't want to be working for someone else. But hey, if you want to, I'm not being judgmental. There's no criticism. None at all. Absolutely not. This is simply a different direction in life and a different direction in terms of earning an income. If you want to do this and you'd like to have a chat, feel free to reach out to me at info@simcoeplastics.com. This will also be up on my YouTube page, the audio portion of this podcast, and on my LinkedIn page. If you're so inspired to reach out, by all means, reach out. I don't know how I can necessarily help, but sometimes just having another entrepreneur to talk to, I'm fine with that. I'd be more than happy to speak with you, offer my opinion, assistance, whatever the case may be. Because I may work in the plastics industry, but as it always comes down to, we're dealing with people. And I know it sounds cliche, but it just is. We deal with people. We are people dealing with people. And if that's in the capacity of a supplier-customer relationship or, sort of this mutual support that can happen sometimes, I'm here for it. So reach out if you'd like, and I'm going to leave it at that. Just, if you want to be an entrepreneur, think long and hard about it. It's rewarding, but it's a lot of work. And there's sacrifice. But think about it. It's tremendously rewarding. So that's this episode of That Plastics Guy. I hope you enjoyed something just a little bit different in the plastics industry, but sort of tangential to it, I guess. So please do follow me on LinkedIn. You can follow me under That Plastics Guy, or myself personally, Kurt Stahle. We're on Instagram and we're on Facebook, Simcoe Plastics, and my YouTube channel, That Plastics Guy. And just for the fun of it, I recently started, because I'm also a car guy, I started a second YouTube channel called Kurtzky's Garage, and it's sort of chronicling me and some of my issues that I face looking after my fleet of aging cars, but also interviewing people who have collections, and it's just sort of a fun thing I wanted to do. So if you're a car person, I'd welcome you to check out Kurtzky's Garage as well. And I do believe we will have a newsletter out probably in early December. I know we put one out not that long ago, but we'll do something for early December. Get you ready for the holidays. And that's where we're going to leave it. So thanks again for listening. And remember, let's be good to each other. Thanks. Bye for now.